Welcome back to the podcast. This episode is so incredibly powerful, it totally blew me away. Squid, whose real name is Michael, gave his testimony at our recent church Christmas camp in front of around about 500 people. The amazing part is that just over a year before, he was suffering from anxiety so severely that he hadn't even left the house in months, and it affected his physical body to the point where his limbs would lock up and he couldn't move. His wife Beth talks about how, despite him suffering since before they were married and for many years after, she never lost faith that God would heal him. This is a must listen to not only learn about the depths of suffering that anxiety, depression and mental illness can cause, but of the amazing grace and love that God brings and his amazing healing power. Just a quick warning about the content though. We obviously believe in the ability for God to heal all manner of physical, emotional and mental illnesses. However, if you need immediate help regarding mental health, in Australia contact Beyond Blue Support Service via phone on 1300 22 46 36 or www.beyondblue.org.au or contact Lifeline on 131114 or www.lifeline.org.au. If you're not in Australia, then please see your general practitioner, local mental health service or your local hospital emergency department. Time to get into the interview. Squid and Beth, welcome to the Revival on the Air Today podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
We're at Carricklinga Camp, just south of Adelaide, in our caravan. With microphones stuck in our faces.
Yes.
Pretty windy outside, so it might be a little bit noisy, but hopefully everyone will be able to hear us just perfectly. So you've got a pretty amazing testimony, which I heard for the first time, actually, last night.
First time, really?
Yeah, I didn't actually know your testimony. So you were on stage in front of about, I reckon, 500 people last night.
Yeah, somewhere about that.
Which most people go, well, that's pretty scary. But it's all the more amazing when we delve into your testimony. So thanks for both coming along and sharing, because it's a joint testimony, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, brilliant. So maybe just start. Did you both grow up in, with spirit-filled believing parents?
Yeah, I grew up with, as you said, spirit-filled and believing parents. Always grew up knowing that God was real and that anything that we needed we could pray and He would deliver for us.
Yeah, okay. And Beth, same for you?
Yeah. So my mum came along when I was 3, when my parents split up, and so pretty much growing up always believing in God and coming along to camps and kids camp and all that sort of stuff. So I always definitely knew that God was there, and just a slightly different experience from Squid. And, we never really had much to do with each other because he was at Elizabeth and I was at Woodcroft, and that's like worlds apart, even though it's only an hour apart.
So for those that are listening who don't understand the geography of Adelaide, that's sort of north and south of Adelaide, about as far away as you can get from each other. So Squid, we have to address the squid in the room. What's with the name?
The dichotomy of my name, yes. Only hours after I was born, my uncle named me Squid because of certain bodily functions that happen to babies. I've always been called Squid.
Is that right?
Yeah. Since I was born.
There you go.
I knew that I was Squid before I knew I was Michael. So
there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll refer to you as Squid today.
Sure. Okay.
To keep it real for you.
Yes.
All right. So let's get stuck into your testimony, Squid.
Sure.
Where did it start?
I guess specifically my anxiety testimony began in 2013, June or July, in the Adelaide Convention there for the Revival Fellowship. I think I had given an item during that camp, hadn't I?
Yeah.
Or was that convention, and I was on stage and
you're a guitar playing singery type
singer, singer for the most part, and we had a young people's choir, and I led one of the songs and did a solo and whatnot.
Actually, I remember that.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that sort of bubbling behind the surface there was the volcano was about to erupt, so to speak. But after all that was done, I was sitting in the middle of convention. There's 1,000 people around me, and I felt wrong. I felt separate from the crowd. I felt like I was the only real person in the room, and everybody around me was like a trap or a monster, waiting to jump out at me. And so I
And had you had those sort of feelings before, or was that sort of new and foreign to you?
No, it was very new and foreign to me. I've never enjoyed crowds particularly.
Me neither. I'm not a crowd guy.
Yeah.
I'd rather be behind the microphone here.
And I'd never enjoyed the stage either. I sort of pushed myself through it because I'm a reasonably talented singer, and that's a shame to hide that. So I persevered and did this sort of stage thing. But I've never liked crowds or stage, and but it wasn't anything like this. So I couldn't explain it, and I just left. I don't think I even said anything to anybody. No. I just walked out and went out, got some air, and went out and looked over the Torrens, and I had a panic attack standing out looking at the Torrens, and there's people eating lunch at a restaurant to my left, and people looking over and wondering what was going on. And
so what does a panic attack look like for those that don't understand what that is?
So usually the first thing that happens is your heartbeat raises. It starts thumping and going really fast, like you're really nervous. Then you start breathing really quickly and heavily, then some weird things start to happen because your body's not getting the oxygen that you need. For me particularly, it can vary for some people, but for me, it started with the roof of my mouth would get tingles, and I'd feel like my teeth were going to fall out, and then it would spread to my whole face, and I'd feel like my face was going to fall off.
Whoa.
It's a really weird sensation, and if it continues, eventually all my limbs would lock up, and I'd end up in the fetal position and sort of writhing on the floor, not being able to control sort of my reality, really, not being able to control what I knew was real and what was not, and you can really bring up the demons in your mind. You can really bring up your worst nightmares and really believe that they're real during these panic attacks. But this one out on the Torrens wasn't perhaps that dramatic. But it certainly wasn't easy in any case. And I'd had a panic attack before in my childhood, but not to the same scale as what would come.
And so, Beth, where were you at this point? Were you?
I was still in the meeting, and I noticed that he'd been gone for a little while, and I thought, oh, that's weird. I should probably just go check on him. And that's really weird for us. We're pretty... We've been pretty independent of each other, but still together because he was living in Mount Gambier at the time and I was living in Adelaide. I was at uni.
To clarify, we'd been dating for 6 months. Yeah.
And
hey,
so
I did that. My wife and I did that long-distance dating thing. And I was living in Mount Gambier, she was living in Adelaide.
There you go.
Hey, I get it. I understand.
Yes. Good recipe. So I think, honestly, looking back, I think the Lord sort of gave me a little nudge and went, you need to go outside. And I went outside and I found him. And he told me what had happened. He was sort of finished by then. And I said, oh, you just had a panic attack, because I'd had them going through year 12 a couple of times. So the same sort of, quickening of the breath and the heart rate, and you can't calm down and you can't quite cry. You can't let all of the emotion out. Mm-hmm. And it's a horrible feeling. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. And so I went out with him and had a little bit of prayer with him. But then we went back in and he was okay for pretty much the rest of convention, and we still went out for fellowship with the saints. And so didn't think too much about it at that point. Just thought, okay, some people get really nervous here at camp on New Year's Eve with the hundreds of people that are here, and I know lots of people who get uncomfortable at convention because there are so many people around. Just hadn't really thought too much about it at that point.
Okay. So what happened after convention?
Over the next sort of few weeks leading up to maybe 3 months, I began to get them first, a couple a week, and then it progressed until I was having a couple a day.
Whoa.
It just really sort of opened the floodgates. I was there was nothing particularly stressful going on in my life either. I was happy. I was in my third year of my apprenticeship. I'd been going out with Beth, and I was pretty sure I was going to ask her to marry me pretty soon, and things were great. There was nothing really stressful going on, and so I couldn't really understand why this was happening. At first, I put it down to I thought I might have been undiagnosed, perhaps like ADHD or somewhere on the autism spectrum or something like that, because I really felt that I was broken. I really felt that there was something wrong with me. like with my brain, and it just didn't feel the way I saw the people, everybody else around me. I felt like they, could control themselves and could think clearly all the time and things like that. And I sort of, which of course everybody's complicated and everyone struggles with their emotions and their, controlling themselves. But I thought something was so broken, and I didn't know what it was, and I was hiding it from my parents, who I still lived with.
And did you know Beth? Did you know what was?
Yeah. So when he would have a panic attack, he would call me, and we would have some prayer. And I was constantly telling him, you need to tell your parents, because I can't be there with you all the time. Adelaide's 500 kilometres away from Mount Gambier. And I was, really pushing him to tell his parents, but he wouldn't. And in the end, I sort of dobbed him in. Mm-hmm. He was having a panic attack, and I was in Adelaide. It wasn't the time at camp. He told it wrong last night.
Oh, was it? Okay, was that a different time?
So yeah, I was in Adelaide, and he called me because he was having a panic attack, and it wasn't subsiding. Normally, I would pray for him, and he would be okay. I could hear him calm down, but it wasn't happening this time. And so I sent a message to his parents while I was on the phone praying for him, and just said, go into Squid's room. And they went in, and I heard them, and one of them picked up the phone and said that they were in there now. And then, they sort of hung up and had prayer, and Squid called me back later and said that they knew now, and they'd had a chat about it, and were going to start praying for him, because now they knew something was wrong. They knew what was wrong.
I'm sure they probably picked up that something was wrong.
Yeah.
But now there was a name to it, wasn't there?
Yeah. And at this stage, I hadn't gone to a doctor, or I hadn't done anything like that.
That must have been pretty hard for you, being so far away, Beth.
Yeah.
To someone you obviously clearly cared for them to be going through that.
Yes, it was very difficult to watch someone you love suffer, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
But like in one of the talks last night, there's nothing you can do but pray, but that's all you can do, and that's the best thing to do.
That's the best thing to do, yeah.
But as humans, you want to do the practical things first. And it's kind of urging him to go to the doctor to see what was wrong, what specifically. But because of his mum's experiences with depression, he was a bit nervous about medication and stuff like that, and doing my best to respect that. So just praying for him a lot, all the time.
So now your parents knew. What happened after that?
It was still, not a secret, but it was still not really talked about sort of amongst the fellowship in Mount Gambier. There's, at the time, there was probably 40 people in fellowship in Mount Gambier. And so I was still, able to go to meetings, but, every now and then I would duck out, I'd do the whole, I'd go to the toilet several times during the meeting, but, I didn't need to go. I just needed to get out of the room, basically. And, I just was behaving weirdly, I guess, from the outside, and it still wasn't talked about. And I guess eventually I ended up talking one-on-one with a lot of people, over supper or over whatever it was. But it sort of crept through the assembly that's what I was suffering with, and I ended up getting a few people that on side that really helped. Really helped me. There's a particular sort of older couple, maybe my parents' age, that really helped. It just sort of developed. It got worse. It started affecting my work. I had a few panic attacks at work, and one in particular, I was. It was sort of the end of the day, and everybody was in the workshop. I'm an electrician, by the way, industrial electrician. And all the guys were packed up and waiting for the clock to tick over to clock on time. And I wasn't there. I was in the locker room having a panic attack in the shower cubicle.
Whoa.
And this one was a bad one, and I ended up completely locking up. I couldn't move my arms and legs. And one of my co-workers, I didn't really speak much with. We sort of knew each other's names, and that's about it. But he came in and thought I was having a seizure, so he ran out and got the first aider and my boss, and they were talking about calling an ambulance and whatever. And I'm trying to convince them, although through clenched jaw because I couldn't move my muscles very well, that I didn't need an ambulance, that it would pass, and that I just needed 10 minutes and to to get over this. But that's sort of, again, similar to how my parents found out. My workplace all found out sort of around the same time, and it really started to affect me. I got pulled off of certain jobs because what's the risk that you're going to have a panic attack in a dangerous situation or whatever, and after a certain amount of time, I started having days off of work. Made an arrangement that I would work 4 10-hour days instead of my 5-8, and I would have Wednesdays off in the middle of the week because I started to not be able to cope working every day, and I really only just got over the line to finish my apprenticeship.
Which in itself is sort of a blessing, really, because without that, we would have been in trouble now. And the Lord really gave Squid a boss who understood. He had was it his wife?
Yeah, his wife had
experience with anxiety as well. And over this span that he's talking about, we'd gotten engaged and I'd moved to Mount Gambier and we'd gotten married. And there were lots of...
Yeah,
you are. That's okay. You focus on the anxiety. I'll talk about the rest of the stuff. You were sort of living just that one part.
Yeah, living in my own head, yeah.
And it was a real blessing that he was able to finish up his apprenticeship because I just started uni. I'm a teacher now, but I just started uni, so I wasn't working very much. He was, bringing in the money for us. And, there were a lot of blessings along the way. And like Squid said in his testimony last night, when we got married, he was really panicking that he would have a panic attack during our wedding and people would think he was trying to ditch me. And I was a little bit worried about it too. I had some prayer with my bridesmaids the morning of, and it was just a very calm, happy day. Lots of people cry at their weddings, but neither of us did because we were just so relieved that we were both there and happy. Yeah. There were lots of times like that where things would ease just a little bit, just enough to give us a break and to renew our strength.
I remember somebody remarking a couple of weeks or sort of after we got back from our honeymoon that at my wedding was the first time they'd seen me smile in close to a year.
Whoa!
Yeah,
really?
Because I was calm enough around people to be smiling and to be happy and stuff like that. That day was a real blessing. Beyond just getting married, being able to have my mind again for that day and for the couple of weeks, our honeymoon and stuff like that.
And did either of you question getting married?
No.
Well, no, I didn't. So when you're having a panic attack, all of your doubts come right to the forefront of your mind. And I remember this one heartbreaking time. Squid dropped me off back at my place in Mount Gambier, and he was just sobbing, begging me not to marry him. And I said, no, it's for better, for worse, and that starts now. Richer, poorer, sickness and in health. We've done a lot now. And I just said, this isn't you, this person right now. I'm like, and I don't believe you. So I'm going to marry you.
Wow.
And we even had to step out in faith a little bit to get married because logically we should have had a very small wedding, but we didn't want that. We wanted to celebrate with, well, our families are huge. So it was about 100 just family and then, 60 to 80 friends. So it was a real leap of faith even to have the wedding we did have rather than just, nick off to the registry and not avoid all the fuss.
So where'd you get married? In Adelaide or in Mount Gambier?
In Mount Gambier.
And whereabouts?
The Rose Garden.
The Rose Garden.
Sort of main corner of Mount Gambier. You know it. Yeah. You know Mount Gambier.
We thought the Rose Garden was cute because my maiden name is Rose.
Nice.
It was amazing that even that I have clear memories of our wedding because a lot of the time that I'm talking about, I sort of have only vague, fuzzy memories because just my mind was just broken. Yeah. But I very clearly remember our wedding and our honeymoon.
If you don't remember any day, that's a day you want to remember.
Well, on our honeymoon, we went to the Gold Coast, so we went to the theme parks, hundreds and thousands of people, and he was fine. It was like, praise the Lord. He gave us, I think it was a couple of months.
There was some time when we got back that I was sort of clear and able to function and stuff like that. But
then what happened after that?
I mean, it wasn't time yet, was it? So, I mean, things just, I don't know that there was a tipping point, but things just steadily got worse again as they had before. And like I said, just not long after we got married, I finished up my apprenticeship, and I was looking for work after that because my employer was the type to sort of train up an apprentice and then let them go and find their own work and everything. So yeah, I was looking for work and I couldn't find it, and it was stressing me out and stressing Beth out, and yeah, things just really spiraled at that point, and very rapidly. It wasn't long until I did get a little bit of work. I got 3-4 months of work. 3 or 4 months. But yeah, things just got really, really bad. I remember sort of 3 months or 4 months into that job, I was helping out a different team. We were replacing a lot of the pokie machines in the Mount Gambier RSL and moving them to a different room. It was a big job, so they pulled everybody from all different projects onto it. And I had a panic attack in the middle of the Mount Gambier RSL at lunchtime. And I sat down on the floor and I literally couldn't move. I couldn't move my legs, and I couldn't, and nobody understood what was happening to me. I mean, the person that I worked with the closest knew that I had these attacks, but sort of my boss, again, this time didn't know, and this boss was a little, not less understanding, but he sort of didn't have the personal experience that my previous boss had. But yeah, so I had this panic attack, and I just didn't go back to work the next day and the next day, and a couple of months went by, and I realised that I should probably go back and get my tools.
So you hadn't been back to work for a few months.
And I hadn't rung my boss. We just both understood. I couldn't work. I couldn't do it.
And so had you sought any medical help or anything at this point?
By this stage I had. I'd been doing counselling.
And you've been diagnosed with first panic disorder, then generalised anxiety disorder.
Yeah. And so what's their treatment? What's their advice? How do they work through that?
To begin with, I resisted medication.
Yep.
I really didn't want to go down that path. I'd seen the rigmarole that you go with trying to figure out what your medication should be and how badly it can spiral if you get it wrong. So I didn't want that. And so apart from that, all that could be done was counselling.
And was that helping or changing the severity of what you were dealing with?
It was helping, yes. But my counsellor was, he was a Christian, but not as we would know it. And he didn't believe in divine healing, and sort of didn't fully understand where I was coming from about what my relationship with God was. He was more interested in using prayer as a form of meditation and things like that. I mean, it was good that he encouraged me to keep praying, and of course, there was a few natural things that helped. I got some exercises that I could do to detangle my brain, if you know what I mean, when I was feeling like a panic attack was about to happen. So yeah, it was helping sort of day to day, but it wasn't stopping the trend of things getting worse. You know,
it wasn't solving it.
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
No, just sort of managing it a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And eventually you did go on medication.
Eventually I did, yeah. It sort of reached a point things were getting real bad.
What does real bad look like? Because it already sounds real bad to me.
Well, one particular real bad time, there were lots of things. You know, if Squid was having a panic attack and I was there, he was sort of okay. But if someone else came, like his mum came up to him once, and the look on his face, he didn't recognise her, and he was terrified of her. And she's not a scary woman. He loves his mum. But he was terrified of anyone who wasn't me in those moments. And there were sometimes, normally he would, you know, if you think of a bottle of Coke shaking up and then you let all the pressure out, he would feel better after a panic attack, like the pressure had been released.
Yeah.
One particular time, though, the panic attacks kept happening. He would finish one and then immediately straight onto another panic attack. And that happened 3 or 4 times, and we ended up having to call an ambulance because nothing was working. I couldn't even pray anymore. I was so upset. I was just sobbing. That was the time I thought I was going to lose him to this. And that was a really hard time, obviously. And praise the Lord, by the time I got to the hospital, he was okay.
Those panic attacks that's cyclical, they keep going and going, you know, after the one stops, the next one starts. They hurt physically they hurt. Like your lungs are working so hard, and when you're that badly starved of oxygen, your muscles burn like you can't believe. I felt like I was in a pool of acid.
Wow.
They burn so bad, and it does for days afterwards. The day after that, I slept the whole day. So beyond just being emotionally draining, they actually really hurt.
Wow, that's amazing.
And, there were a few times when it had been going on for a long time, a few years, 2 or 3 years by this point. He'd get a bit down and the Lord's not saving me. And I remember in the middle of one panic attack, he just cried out, "Lord, kill me," because he knew that he couldn't take his own life and he didn't want to do that to himself or to me or to anyone else who cared about him, but he didn't want to live anymore. Yeah. And there were a few times when I went to the meeting not knowing what I was going to come home to. Yeah. And I just really had to go, "Lord, you've just got to keep him around," just because I never had any doubt that eventually he would be healed. And I used to say to Squid, either you're going to get healed or the Lord's going to come back, and either way is good with me. Yeah. And, there were a few things we used to do, like before we would go into a meeting or a camp, I'd get him to say, "I am a son of the living God and I will not be afraid." And he'd go, "But I am afraid." I'm like, "But you got to just keep saying it. Trick your brain."
It's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly who we are.
And suffering as I was, I didn't want to say it a lot of the time because I how do I put it? I didn't. It's such a powerful statement, and I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel like I earned the title of the Son of the Living God. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's not something that can be earned, though.
No,
is it?
That's right.
Wow. So you're now 2 or 3 years in?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we should talk about Youngies Camp last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah, I think it was last year. So 2017, the Adelaide Youngies had a camp Survivor, and the theme was "He that endures to the end, the same shall be saved." Yeah. And we always came up to Adelaide Youngies Camp. That actually, unfortunately, fell on the same weekend as Mount Gambier's camp, but we needed some Youngies time. I really cherished those times at camp because, praise the Lord, I'm really blessed that anxiety and depression, mental illnesses are selfish in nature, but Squid was still able to be selfless and let me go off on my own and recharge at camp.
That's right. These camps were terrifying to me because there's a lot of people crammed in a space, and there's a lot of shouting and singing and, everything that goes. So I was really scared to come to these camps, but I knew that Beth needed it. She needed to recharge. She needed to socialize. She needed to.
Yeah. And this particular camp, it was about enduring. And we drove all the way from Mount Gambier to Adelaide, straight into camp, and Squid all of a sudden was in extreme pain, physical pain. I knew he wasn't having a panic attack. I knew what that looked like. In the end, I had to drive him to the hospital. I was in tears going, the Lord doesn't give us more than we can bear. I was like, surely this is it, Lord.
I think I've reached my limit.
What are you doing? I can't handle any more drama in my life. And anyway, I took him to the hospital and he had to have a medical procedure. And the be-all and end-all of that, people were saying to me, "It's a blessing. It must be a blessing." It's not a blessing. It's a pain. But he came back to camp and he was on basically morphine throughout the whole camp to manage the pain. And he was so on that and out of it that he sat in the meetings and he came to the meals. And I was going, "Oh, they're all right. It was a blessing, not the kind I wanted, but, the Lord always does that to us." And at this camp, it was really pressed onto us that, enduring is having patience and acceptance. And if you're just patient enough, God will move. And he's not going to move the way you want him to because he's smarter than us. And
at this stage, really, I hadn't been going to meetings, not for lack of trying, but I hadn't had meetings for a long time.
Yeah.
It was really hard to get to them.
So you're still in the mount at this point?
Yeah, yes, living in the mount. Yeah,
still in Mount Gambier at this point. Yep. And that camp really changed my walk, really reinvigorated me, and I just went, you know what? If I'm patient enough, things will change. Things will make a move. And it was about that time we decided to move back to Adelaide. We sort of viewed it a little bit as a retreat to the home army base. We'd been out on location for a long time and all of my natural family live in Adelaide and all of the friends that I grew up with in Adelaide were all still there. And I just felt like we needed the safety of being able to disappear a little bit into a big fellowship. In a small fellowship, they need you at everything you're really dependent on, which was great when we first got married, but was becoming really stressful.
Yeah.
When we were in survival mode.
Yeah. And even though in Mount Gambier, I had my family and people that I loved, got to say that I had been at this stage pretty much confined to my house for a long time. I was so afraid to leave the house, and even I couldn't let people into my house. I remember on one particular occasion, my dad and this brother that came to give me communion on the Sunday, because it had been several weeks since I'd been able to get to a communion, even just for communion, and I couldn't let them in the door. Just the thought of them coming into my house was terrifying to me, and I couldn't I had to get Beth to send them away because I couldn't let them in the house. And that's my dad and this brother that I've known for so long, I couldn't let them in the house.
So I think you said something like last night that you'd actually not left the house at one point for 3 months or something.
Yeah, that was a bit before this camp.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a period there where I didn't leave the house for, I reckon it was close to 3 months.
Yeah.
And so much so, like I basically lived my entire life on my computer, on the internet and talking with friends. That was the only way I could actually reach people.
Yeah.
I didn't leave the house for so long that when I finally did one day, I saw some grass in the median strip on the road, and I was just awestruck at how green the grass was, because I'd forgotten what colour grass was. I'd forgotten the colour green, if you know what I mean. Because I hadn't seen it in so long.
It's almost like someone who's released from prison, isn't it?
Yeah.
They realise the amazingness of what the outside world is like. Wow. So you come to this camp, you're reinvigorated.
Yeah, we decide once and for all to make the move back to Adelaide, and we went, Lord, we've decided, so now you need to bless it.
Yeah.
And we'd attempted to make the move a couple of times and it had fallen through. We were like, the Lord will give us a sign when it's time to go. And actually it was my brother who told me, no, just do it and the Lord will bless it. If it's what you feel like you need, go for it. And I applied for, I was in my fourth year, about to start my fourth year of uni at this point, and I applied for an internship to be working at a school for my final year. And I got that. Yeah, in Adelaide, and I got that. And through that came a job in their out of school hours care, got that. So job was sorted. And then we just moved. We didn't have the money for it. We didn't have anywhere to go, but it was all blessed. We had people who helped us with the move, people who paid for the moving van. We moved in with my dad for a little while, and it was just so of the Lord, all the timing. And Squid felt comfortable enough at my dad's house to be okay. And from there we went, okay, now we'll decide which centre in Adelaide we'll go to, where we'll fellowship. And like Squid said last night, we decided we'd give everywhere a go, because I grew up at Woodcroft and he grew up at Elizabeth. So we went to Woodcroft twice.
I actually didn't want to fellowship at Elizabeth because I'd had these hangovers from my childhood, and I sort of was like, if I go back there, they'll just see me as a kid, and won't recognise, how much I've grown since then or anything like that. So we actually didn't want to end up at Elizabeth.
Yeah, well, the Lord has a plan.
Yeah.
We decided we'd go everywhere twice, and we'd go to a house. We'd try and get to a house meeting in those times, and we'd go to the event, whatever it was. Yeah, we went to Woodcroft twice, and Squid sat in the car.
Yeah, both times I ended up in the car and couldn't face the meeting.
And he left after the first meeting on one of those weeks. We decided, through a set of odd circumstances, to go to Elizabeth next, which is further away than the Vogue, so I'm not sure why we did that. We went into Elizabeth, and I went in and chose a special seat so that Squid could run away if he needed to.
So imagine at this point, a few years in, you're still praying, obviously, for a healing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I imagine there are other people still praying for you for a healing, and prayer and fast and all sorts of things, I imagine. Mm-hmm. Had your prayer life changed over that period of time? Had it got stronger, more determined, less determined? Was the turning point perhaps for you the camp around the patience thing? Like, what helped along that way?
That camp was so important for Beth, but it didn't necessarily do a lot for me. I mean, I got to a few meetings and it was very important for Beth. But at this point, when we'd moved to Adelaide, the part of the reason why we moved to Adelaide is because I'd given up on myself. I'd given up on the idea that I would be able to ever work again, or to, I'd readied myself that this might be forever. This might be for the rest of my life and our lives together. Yeah. So I wanted to move to Adelaide to make sure Beth had the support that she needed, in family and friends. Yeah. And I stopped praying for myself and I started praying for Beth to have the strength to deal with this, because, we were married and for better or for worse. And it was certainly pretty rough, and so I wanted to make sure that she was strong enough to, she was still finishing the last year of her degree and trying to work and do this unpaid internship at the same time. And it was a lot for her, and I'd given up on myself.
So your prayer had changed from requesting a personal healing to praying for Beth, for her to have the strength to be able to continue to support.
I think my prayer changed. I think I was kind of always generally praying, Lord, deliver Squid from this, deliver us from this. And, along the way there were times when money got very tight. I was like, Lord, please provide for us. And he always did. We never ran out. We never went wanting. And I think for me, it became, all right, Lord, give me the patience I need. Give me the strength I need. And he always did. There were times when I was like, you know what, this is way too much work. I'm sick of all of it. And then the Lord would just give me peace and strength, and I'd go. And I never doubted that Squid was going to be healed one way or another. And I just prayed every morning. I prayed, Lord, get us both through this day. And then at night I would pray, Lord, thank you for getting us through this day. And, every day just not thinking about what tomorrow would be. And for these 3-4 years, so we've been together for nearly 6 years, and it was about 4.5 of that was with the anxiety. For that whole time, our life had been on hold. I was at uni, but Squid wouldn't let me quit to work more. And we couldn't plan. We couldn't do the young married, go overseas and visit other fellowships thing, because he couldn't get anywhere near an airport. We couldn't plan to have children because kids freaked him out while he was anxious. And so our entire lives were just spent in this limbo of not being able to plan for anything. So I just went, all right, just give me the strength for today. That's all that I need to deal with just today. And that's definitely, I think I became a lot more present in my walk with the Lord, not planning for the future. It was just, okay, what's today going to bring? And I think it just definitely turned more to my Bible and read a bit of Job. I was like, Job had patience, I can have patience.
We all tend to Job at times like that, don't we? So now, you're off to Elizabeth for a meeting?
Yes.
Yes. The night before, we had been staying for a couple of days with my brother and his wife, and she had been close with another sister, an older sister, who had gone through. She'd had a mental breakdown and anxiety and everything like that, and she'd received her victory. She'd been healed of it, and she was soldiering on in the Lord. And this was somebody that I kind of grew up with. She's friends with my mum, and she'd always been around. And I looked at her with such jealousy and such enviousness, because she'd gotten the victory and I hadn't. And as far as our beliefs go, right, God loves us all the same, and He wants to care and provide for us all the same. So why had she gotten this healing and I hadn't? And Beth and I were still struggling so much. And we were staying with my brother and his wife, and this sister was over for supper that Saturday night after a prayer and fast, and talking really kind of like this into detail about how everything went down for her. And it just really how do I put it? It made me realize that we weren't playing a game, that God really did things And like, of course, I had already always known that, but I don't know. My perspective just shifted that night. I really loved this sister, but I was so jealous of her, and it really it put a bee in my bonnet, you know. And I didn't sleep very much that night.
Did it put a bee in your bonnet or a fire in your belly?
Bit of both, I guess.
Even just before he goes on, that same day, so we hadn't gone to the prayer and fast because we had a family commitment. And also it was the prayer and fast where they were going to get the youngies to sit on the stage, and Squid was like, I'm not going anywhere near that. And so we'd been at this family commitment, and when Squid got really stressed towards the end, it wasn't a panic attack that he had mutism. He could not physically talk
Which
anymore.
wasn't uncommon, by the way.
Yeah, it did happen a lot.
A lot.
So what do you mean couldn't?
It's like the part of your brain that processes words wasn't working. It was locked up and filled with cement. And
so you're still thinking thoughts, but there's no way to get that actually into action.
Out of my mouth. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
And he didn't look like he was panicking in those moments, but he just couldn't talk at all. And that happened to him that day before we went and had a chat with his sister. And so then, you know, what happened that weekend was even more stuck in my mind.
Yeah. So, I hadn't had much sleep that Saturday night, and Sunday morning came, and I used to have a thing about getting ready to go somewhere. I used to, on Sunday mornings, I would get up and, if I could, have a shower or the night before or something, and get changed as soon as I got up. Because if I got ready to go somewhere, I would lose it in the process, and I would have a panic attack, and I couldn't leave. So as was my usual way of doing things, because I used to have panic attacks in the shower. Those were some of the worst. Anyway, but on this morning, I was really, really casual, and I got up and I had my breakfast, and I had a nice conversation with my brother, and I had a coffee, and it was all really casual, and time came to get ready for the meeting, and I just jumped in the shower and didn't even really think about it. But I was determined. There was it was like all of a sudden all my all my limbs were 10 times more powerful, you know, and I just was determined to go through the day and to get the meeting done and to soldier on and from here on out, I would not stop.
Was it the conversation the night before with the other lady who'd been healed? Like, did you think that played a role in? It
certainly was a big motivator. Because her testimony is amazing. She'd broken down all of her experience. She'd been in the Lord since her early 20s, and she's 50 something, so 30 odd years, and she had this mental breakdown, and she had to piece by piece rebuild her whole walk and re-establish her walk with the Lord, and her prayer life and her relationships with people in the fellowship and with her husband and with her children, and really just rebuilt her whole life. And she did it just step by step and not ever stopping and not ever giving up. And that is what fired me up. That idea that, okay, we're at the bottom now, and we just take a step and we keep taking another step, and you don't stop.
And so the determination on that Sunday was exactly that, was the determination. Just the step today is to get to that meeting today.
And if this took years, I was willing, but I was not going to stop, and I was very determined. Getting ready for the meeting, I just went through the shower, and I prayed through the shower and got ready, and it's time to go, and we got in the car and drove. At this stage, I didn't trust myself driving, so Beth drove to the meeting, and I sort of had this moment of hesitation once we got to the meeting at Elizabeth, and we sat in the car park, and I hesitated whether I would go in or not, and Beth went in, and she arranged for me to have a seat in the sound box. It's at the back of the hall. It's a bit separate from everybody. Yeah, so she'd arranged this seat. And to begin with, I didn't want to take it until after the choruses, because they're quite loud sometimes. So I sat in the car and listened to the choruses on the radio. And then I felt good, and I was kind of kicking myself that I'd stayed in the car to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I went in and sat in the seat in the sound box. I still felt good. So after the testimonies, I went and sat next to Beth in the main meeting, and I listened through the talk, and that talk was really important as well. It was
Pastor John.
Pastor John gave a talk about are you prepared for the consequences of your healing, talking about the lame man who, when the angel came and touched the waters in the fountain, he tried to rush in and get there and sort of couldn't ever do it because nobody was there to help him into the water. And and so when Jesus asked, I can't remember the exact wording.
Would you be healed?
Yeah, would you be healed? Jesus asked this man, would you be healed? Is that what you want? Is that what you and so the talk was about, are you prepared for the consequences of your healing? Do you actually want to be healed? At the time, I wasn't, it's funny, anxiety is such an emotional thing. You would think that this talk, and it aligned with my thinking process, you'd think I would be really emotional at this talk, but I wasn't. I was just accepting of it. I was like, yes, I'm ready. Let's do this. I'm prepared. Let's go. Yeah. And then I got through the talk, and the gifts rolled around, and we took communion, and the gifts came in, and I ended up operating a gift of prophecy. And I was
just surprised.
Beth standing next to me, and she just about collapsed in the seat next to me.
This is Squid's first meeting, sitting with me in years at this point, couple of years.
A year and a half, 2 years.
Hadn't operated a gift in at least that long. And there I am going, whoa. I was crying in the middle of the gifts.
But it was completely emotionless for me. It was just calm acceptance that I've been healed. And after in the break between meetings, there's kids running around in the foyer, and I used to not be able to be in a room with more than one conversation going on because I would be forced to listen to both conversations, and then my brain would just fill up. Yeah. There's 20 or 30 people talking in the foyer all at the same time, and I was focused, and I was calm, and it was unlike anything that had been for years. Yeah.
And it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't emotional for you, and it wasn't a special day, or there was nothing outward that was big that was happening. It was just like you'd come back to that person. It was like it was a normal Sunday, and this is what he did every Sunday. And I was just
a normal Sunday 5 years earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going, who is this person standing there? And I was honestly staring at him the whole day, just like, praise the Lord, this huge thing has happened.
It was honestly like, like I'd taken off my jacket and left it in the car. I'd taken off my anxiety and left it in the car, and just gone in healed, and it was like, it was amazing. Over the next coming days, we really pushed the limits. We went to Marion Shopping Centre, and
I don't like Marion Shopping Centre.
I remember talking with a brother that week, and I was like, I remember now, I really hate shopping. I hadn't done it in 3 years. And we went to Rondell Mall, and it was when Carnival was happening.
Yeah.
And there was this big Brazilian drum line and show and dance and bright flashing colours. And the thing for Beth is that instead of running away from it, instead of trying to get to some side alley or a shop or something where I can run away from it, I was looking to see what it was, and let's go see it. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a healing we can ever forget, because no part of our life is the same anymore. Nothing. One of his triggers, weirdly, and this sounds like he was faking it, was he used to get really anxious cleaning the house. And I was like, you're just faking it. But he would just trying to make me do it. He would honestly get really anxious and upset cleaning the house. And then all of a sudden, it's fine, and he's cleaning the house, and we're going food shopping, and we're going to all the meetings and all the events. And there is not a single part of our life now that is the same as it was a year ago.
It's amazing. It's like, Beth said that our life was on pause. It's like we just press play, and things are exactly how they were before.
That's such an amazing testimony. It's so exciting to hear. And there are a number of people, around that are struggling with anxiety today. So
cool.
I'm so stoked that you're happy to share the testimony, because I think when you talk to that lady that Saturday night, and that determination, I hope that this testimony brings that to others as well, that the Lord can heal them and the Lord will heal them. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Squid's story really embodies the power of sharing our testimonies with each other. Why not share this episode or the podcast in general with people you know? Who knows how it will inspire others to achieve their victory? There's a couple of references to scriptures in the Bible which I've included links in the show notes for you. Would you like God to change your life like he changed Squid and Beth's? Send me an email on podcast@revivalontheairtoday.com or head over to our website to find out what the Bible says, www.therevivalfellowship.com. Until next time, God bless.